welcome to all our attendees for joining us for this important panel discussion on improving overall equipment effectiveness using IoT technologies. Now, I'm sure by now you all know how to use the chat tool on the webinar. Please feel free to enter your location or any casual information you'd like there. I will tell you that for the Q&A session near the end of this event, I will only be checking the Q&A. So please put your questions for the panelists in the Q&A tab. Your other comments about where you are and how brilliant that comment just was that Thomas made, put those in the chat. Okay, the track's going to run for 58 minutes, so you'll get out of here on time for the start of the next event. I do want to start by aligning us all on the definition of OEE. That's one of them that floats all over the place. So to align on that, it's a best practices metric that identifies the percentage of planned production time that is truly productive for a specific piece of equipment. So mathematically, it's the product of availability times performance, that is how many, I'll say, pieces per hour compared to the machine makers have promised pieces per hour, times quality. So how often, how fast, and how good. 85% is considered world-class, but we can't rest when we reach that. And most of us don't have to worry about resting anyway, because 60% is much more common. And there are certainly numbers under that. The numbers under 85% indicate a real cost challenge that you're facing. So today we're going to share information about how to use IoT to improve your equipment performance. Now, first, let me introduce our panelists, experts. Start with Francesco Radicati. He's a senior analyst for Guidehouse in Palo Alto, California. He covers IoT and connectivity for Guidehouse Insights and previously did so for Informatech. His initial research was on the smart home and how different connectivity protocols interact with the home. More recently, he's joined us in the manufacturing and transportation world, studying how industries are integrating IoT technology. Next, Thomas Uhlenbruck, the founder and CEO of Pulse Industrial, is a Canuck, one of our Canadian friends in Vancouver, British Columbia. Thomas has a background in AI and process engineering, and his mission with Pulse is to put an IoT device on every steam trap. Currently, they have around 4,500 devices on sites across North America. And our third speaker is Nirat Keswani, the CEO of Empiric.io, located in San Francisco, California. Nirat is an enterprise software and hardware industry veteran. He started Empiric, an IoT and sensor company, helping manufacturers like Tyson Foods, Gilead Sciences, Johnson & Johnson save millions of dollars with proprietary low and no code tools to automate their most critical production processes. Prior to this, he built and sold a Salesforce consulting company and was in a business development and an enterprise AR startup called Dacry. To me, that sounds like it's 5 o'clock somewhere and we should have one. Lastly, me, the moderator, my name's Becky Morgan. I spent 14 years in the manufacturing industry before starting my consulting business 33 years ago. My focus has been on mid-sized manufacturers, somewhere between 100 million and $1 billion. And my most recent book is available through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble, and through the publisher Routledge. That book is Manufacturing Mastery, The Path to Building Successful and Enduring Manufacturing Businesses. Now that you guys know a little bit about us, we need to learn a little bit about you so we can focus our answers to meet your needs. We have one quick poll. Please look at this poll and select the answer that best describes your current relationship with OEE and IoT.
All right, 5 more seconds.
Okay, so we have a lot of consultants or at least non-manufacturing employed here, 60%. That's important for us to know. We also have a small group that does not measure OEE and does not use IoT devices beyond pilots. We have some that measure OEE but don't leverage the power of IoT to do so. And the last one, 14%, we have using IoT devices, including to measure and improve OEE. And it would seem that we would support that bottom choice is the one where we'd like to see you be in the future, because we think it's better for you if you're in manufacturing and have equipment. So thank you. We'll now move on to our panelists. So you guys have a view of who you're talking to now. Thomas, we want to start with the big question of why. Concretely, like not in theory, concretely, what are some of the economic benefits to manufacturers of connecting equipment digitally? And why on earth are you focusing on steam traps?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before the panel started, and there's all these new technologies floating around, and it's fun to talk about the technology, but until it actually has tangible, measurable economic benefits, there's really no place for it in manufacturing, which is so sensitive to their margins. And when they're going to make investments in new technology, they need to see a return on those investments. So I can speak towards the case of steam traps because that's my world and I understand that well. With connecting steam traps to the cloud and monitoring them continuously, as opposed to the older case where they were equipment that failed, would have been manually inspected, you now have the ability to predict and catch these failures before they even happen. And whereas before they were catching these failures months or years after they would happen. So this can cause production downtime in the worst case scenario, but often just causing energy losses over time. So by catching these failures right away, there are steam savings and energy savings, CO2 savings, and all that can be done just through simple digital connectivity.
Okay, thank you. So Industry 4.0 and IoT, we hear all about them. It has great potential as a concept, but each decision can be overwhelming. It's hard to know which sensors, which technologies, which connectivity. So Nirat, can you help us understand a little better how to simplify some of the early but critical decisions? And thinking of what Thomas just said, what do we mean by an IoT platform? And why should we move to an IoT platform to improve OEE instead of having standalone IoT applications?
Thanks, Becky. Appreciate it. Well, a few things about why an IoT platform can really help with improving OEE instead of standalone applications. And coming from the world of enterprise software, this is where I feel like we specialize a lot. First off, customizations and integrations. IoT platforms enable better integrations with different systems and equipment in a factory, which allows for increased automation and more in-depth data analysis. And that results in more efficient workflows. And what I mean by that is you can imagine that if you're using vibration analysis on some of your critical rotating equipment and you predict that a failure is going to happen in advance, but with an IoT platform, because you're able to do integrations very easily, you can actually hook into your SAP system and create a workflow that actually kicks off a work order to SAP. So in that sense, with a platform versus an application, you're actually able to connect those systems and the business processes that happen between those systems, making your workers work more productively. In addition to that, security, better security. Platforms can enable more enhanced security with easy to configure customizations specific to different heavily regulated industries. And finally, stronger AI and ML applications. Having the data all in one place instead of in different disparate systems is going to give you more informed insights you can get about your equipment, and therefore you'll be able to better service them at the right times and increase uptime.
So with this platform, does that mean that, if Thomas has got 20 different sensors in measuring the equipment where he's working, that instead of being 20 different sensors, it will still be 20 physical different sensors, but they'll be compatible and you'll be able to connect the data from them. It provides one connection methodology that then you can connect through one methodology to an SAP or whatever your operating system is.
Yeah, you can satisfy multiple use cases. So in that sense, you would be able to bring in different sensor data points, whether it be from something like Thomas's sensor data points or even another company and another system. You can bring that all into one place.
Okay. So that helps simplify it by saying, let's make all this talk in one voice instead of the Tower of Babel where everything's kind of talking independently.
Exactly, and you'll have more data points, which help you determine, which helps you with your root cause analysis more effectively. In addition to that, connecting the business processes is one of the more important things for actually achieving an improvement in productivity for your workers. And really important nowadays, especially with the thinning workforce, is how can we empower these workers that we have in our manufacturing facilities to work faster?
Yeah, and I've heard a lot that you can't really get to Industry 4.0 until your IT and OT systems are integrated and talking to each other. But if that's true, that creates a whole nother nightmare of security issues and other things. So this is not an easy thing that we're trying to get our listeners to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a big journey that outside of this we can definitely talk more about. But you're absolutely right. It hasn't been easy, and it's going to take some education as well as early market adopters to come forward and take the first steps to be some of the leaders and create good case studies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Francesca,
Absolutely.
you've researched the home industry, which seems totally different from the manufacturing industry, but it's not all that different in many cases. How should manufacturers work with vendors? I mean, at my home, I could just call ADT and say, make it smart, or somebody, I don't know who I call. But I can just call somebody and have them make my home smart. But how do I work with the vendors when I have a manufacturing company and there's tons of vendors and tons of applications and lots of opportunity? How should I work with them to implement different connectivity technologies?
Well, I think in terms of the home, it really does also in a factory come out to what it is that you're trying to achieve, what you as the manufacturer like, what your needs are. Do you want performance or availability? How widely dispersed are the devices that need connecting, and how important latency is? If quick response is needed, how can the vendors help you implement edge computing in your facility? These are all the big questions. And then, I mean, more than the home, my bias is toward wireless connectivity. I like the flexibility of it. It allows manufacturers to change their production lines quickly compared with wired sensors. Although obviously wired sensors have benefits of sort of not being bound to battery life, and sort of in a lot of cases being more secure. But as I say, it's really about the figuring out what exactly you're trying to solve, and who is best placed to help you do that.
And because in my manufacturing company, my pretend one, we don't have any IT geniuses. We do have people who know how to keep SAP running, but we don't have, I'm not supposed to say SAP, that know how to keep SAP running. But we're talking about a whole new technology world now, and my guys probably don't have the skill set. So how do I work with vendors to even figure out what they're talking about? I mean, I know what I want to do conceptually, but I don't know what it takes.
I mean, that's when you call people like Guidehouse Insights to tell you who the best vendors are.
Okay, Hey, nothing wrong with that advice. I just want to call somebody who's going to be helpful and honest, and then I'm not going to have regret meeting, down the road. Okay, Thomas, other than overwhelm, and I'm personally in my pretend manufacturing company on overwhelm, but what are some of the other hesitations that people have for adopting IoT technologies in industrial plants?
Well, I mean, we could probably spend an hour just on this subject alone. I find, one thing is just around habits and what people are used to. Like in our case, we have with these steam traps, facilities are quite used to going around and doing manual inspections. They have equipment for it. Their staff are trained on it. They know how to respond to it, and it just fits into all their workflows. So even though you can offer a technology which might have some savings and some economic benefit, just because of that mental friction of what you're used to, sometimes that transition doesn't happen right away. But also on the technology side, there are certainly some hesitations. Often when you release a new piece of technology, there can be problems, and sometimes those early adopters might get a bad taste, and it just doesn't creep its way into the early majority, even after the technology is improved. And beyond that, cost is also a major hesitation. It kind of goes back to the answer of my first question. These things have to make a lot of economic sense, and sometimes it can be very difficult to measure. If you're providing a piece of technology that can potentially de-risk anything going down in your factory, safety issues, you're really selling insurance at this point, and it's very difficult to measure the benefits of that. And so, when things aren't obvious, the economic choice to go forward, that doesn't always happen. So those are some of the things we've seen.
Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate those insights. Francesco, we had a small group that is using IoT and using it to improve OEE. That's the way those survey results showed. Some of them were using IoT, but not to measure OEE or not to improve OEE. So what are some other technologies that IoT can enable in manufacturing?
Well, first of all, let me suggest that, kind of even if it's not directly related to per unit productivity, I think there are knock-on effects, benefits for overall equipment effectiveness in other areas. So, some of the we talk a lot about predictive maintenance and uptime, keeping machines running, but a lot of the people I was talking to for my IoT and manufacturing report were talking about location services and worker safety as being aspects that can also benefit from industrial IoT. For location services, this is, for example, monitoring where necessary tools are for upgrades and repairs so that your employees save time searching for them before starting a job. And then, location services are also relevant for worker safety. For example, if there's a safety incident at a facility, the real-time location services can help determine if everyone's reached designated areas, meeting areas, or help emergency services locate somebody who might be missing. So these are some of the use cases and some of the other technologies that we've found industrial IoT can help enable.
Thank you. And that's, so we talked about the importance of having a business case. Knowing where my people are when there's a fire going on probably isn't the first one that leaps to mind when I'm getting into IoT, but perhaps it should be first, because I can learn how to use that, see how it works, and demonstrate caring for my employees in a big way. And then I can get into some of the more complex applications after I've understood this one. Does that make sense, Francesco?
Exactly. And I mean, all of it sort of fits together. Where your employees are, where your assets are, and how efficient everybody is, how efficient every piece of equipment is.
Okay, thanks. Now, Nirat, the best parts of an ERP system, and I would say in general, there aren't many good parts. It's like we love the concept of ERP, but does anybody have it really running well? But while they're complicated, incredibly complicated, we only work with one supplier, and we have these experts who know that software, and they come in and they make it run right, is the theory. Okay, so what steps should manufacturers take with implementing an IoT platform, which conceptually sounds kind of like an ERP system, only this is an IoT system. How do we get it simplified with using plug and play sensors or a platform or whatever? How do we make it as easy as ERP theoretically is?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of horror stories about ERP systems. They're not as easy to implement as everyone thinks, but obviously starting with the right partner is good. And what we've noticed with a lot of our customers is also kind of working backwards from your KPIs of your facility. And some of the people in the industry know that as manufacturing excellence. And so manufacturing excellence can mean increasing output and yield. It can mean reducing safety hazards. It can also mean increasing uptime, as well as as well as doing things like improving quality. And the way you can do that, what we tell our customers to start with is let's think about the data that leads to those manufacturing excellence goals. And where plug and play sensors fit in is as follows. Some of the data might live in data historians, LIMS systems, CMMS systems, ERP systems, and then some of the data is just captured manually, and in the way that the folks were capturing it by just walking the plant floor, looking at their machines, and just based off their experience in the plant. And so that's where plug and play sensors really help, is they can capture unique data such as we've talked about, predictive maintenance and vibration analysis off critical rotating equipment, or maybe even zooming in on some of the really cool use cases that we have with our food and beverage manufacturers. And that's environmental and product data as they go throughout their cooking and chilling cycles. And that could be temperature, specifically of a food product as it's going throughout a cooking cycle. So that way you can increase the uptime of your machines that's actually cooking that. You can imagine if a product is going through a smokehouse, like ham, for example, or any kind of meat, usually what they do is they're taking handheld thermometers and they're checking these meats as they go throughout the cooking cycle 3 or 4 times during the cycle, just to make sure that they're cooking at the right levels. But with remote monitoring, you're able to actually optimize that and increase the uptime of your machine, as well as start setting set points for when to take those products out and push them into the next part of their production. And so that wasn't possible before things like plug and play sensors, right? They would have to either rig up very expensive wired setups or just continue to do it the manual way that they were doing it before. So combining that with working backward from your manufacturing excellence goals, you don't want to just deploy any type of plug and play sensor, but you want to work toward what's going to help me automate a lot of the most critical production processes on a daily basis, help me work toward those manufacturing excellence goals, and how can I do that with specific sensors to collect unique data that I'm not already getting from these other systems.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Nirat. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Lucian, we'd like to show poll number 2 now. We'll get a little different information from them. If all of you would take a few seconds to select the one that fits for you. Okay, Lucian, could you show us the answers?
Sure, just 3 more seconds. People are still answering, so.
Okay, see, you can see that. I can't.
All right, we're wrapping up. I'm gonna display the results.
Okay. Interesting. The vast majority of our audience believes that IoT is essential to success for all manufacturers. And I'm comforted by that. But I still don't know about how many of them actually use it. I mean, if we all think it's critical, but then how many companies are actually doing something with IoT to become a better company? And we've got a few people who find it interesting but irrelevant, some interesting but not yet important, and that may be appropriate. And next, the group that believes this is for highly automated manufacturers. I'm sure some of our panelists can tell you, but I've seen companies that have 100-year-old pieces of equipment that they've connected sensors to because the capability is there. We know you all have different equipment of different ages. You work and live in brownfields. And so what's this IoT going to do for you? The reality is it can help a lot without you replacing equipment or anything else. But this is good to know. Thank you for taking the time to answer the questions. Okay, Nirat, you just saw what people think about IoT generally. Can you give us an example of a manufacturing company that used plug and play IoT sensors and a platform to improve their most critical production processes, and then they can see the results in their KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of go in tangent, or sorry, not in tangent. I'll add on to what I was saying in my last point, and that's specifically around a Fortune 100 food and beverage manufacturer like Tyson Foods. Specifically in their facility goals are produce, they have 4 different business units. You have ham, you have chicken, you have beef, you have prepared foods, and in each of those groups of facilities, they have the goal of producing the food with they want more output. They want to produce as safe as possible and at the best quality. And where they use plug and play sensors that really helped them hit those KPIs was environmental monitors, which I was talking about, like when you check the temperatures of these meats as they go throughout the cooking and chilling cycle. Again, a lot of manual intervention, bringing your smokehouses down throughout the day by having to check these 3 or 4 times. With continuous monitoring, they're able to actually pull these hams out earlier because you can start getting creative with the platform and continuous monitoring by being able to set, say, just temperature alerts and thresholds to understand when are your products hitting the right set point that they're ready to move into the next phase of production. And so just in one run, they're able to realize that, hey, we could have pulled these products out and pushed them into the chilling cycle an hour earlier than usual. And that gets you an increase in yield and additional cycles throughout the week and throughout the year as well on a grander scale. In addition to that, that's producing the food at a higher quality and in a safer way. And then on top of that, with the platform, you say, okay, well, where is all this information going? Well, this is a part of GMP standards to actually record this information and make sure that you are diligently tracking how you cook the product. And so with the ability of a platform, you're able to easily create these workflows that can actually produce that GMP documentation that they do 3 times a day when they're actually checking these products to make sure they're cooking at the right levels. So not only have you ensured continuous monitoring and are actually making it making it faster for you to cook these products, but you're at the same time, you're making your operators work a lot faster and producing very, very high level quality documentation that you would usually have to produce manually.
Okay, thank you. Now, do you happen to know if I saw you talked about, for example, hams, we realize these are done sooner, and so we can improve throughput through that cooking oven, through that cooking device.
Correct.
You know, if were they measuring OEE for the cooking device, and did they say, hey, we got an improvement because we've improved throughput and we've got higher quality? So 2 of the factors are better.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah, with the equipment itself, those are their most critical piece. For food production, where they get cooked is one of their most critical pieces of uh, of equipment. And so what they would do is they also add additional sensors such as vibration sensors on those equipment, and as well as they understand, okay, is this equipment close to failing? When do I maintain it? In addition to that, with not having to open up that area, smokehouse, for example, so many times during the day, when you do open it up multiple times, you actually bring down the smokehouse to a steady state, and then it takes a lot of energy to bring it back up to its cooking state. And so you're actually improving the longevity as well of your equipment by reducing the amount of energy that you use on a daily basis to bring that back up to its cooking state 3 different times, right? If you only have to do it once, then you're keeping it at a more consistent, steady cooking state instead of having to bring it down and then bring it back up, which actually takes a lot of energy. So there's a few different areas where overall equipment effectiveness is improved through the use of sensors. And like I always say, it's best to focus on those critical production processes because that's where you're going to see the most impact because it's what you're using on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you. You've helped us prioritize as well as understand it.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
Francesco, we're talking about connectivity, sensors, and we don't have nearly enough people analyzing the data. We're getting better at collecting it and putting it somewhere, but we need analytics as well. And those people aren't graduating from college at the same rate as other people are. What do you see going on in the next few years about connectivity, sensors, and analytics? And I'm going to sneak this one in on you. And do you see your friend AI replacing some of the analytics or being a big factor in the future of both connectivity and analytics?
This is what I get from making clever comments about generative AI before the panel started today.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, okay, so I mean, I think in terms of analytics and machine learning, AI, all of that, this is actually the largest section of the overall industrial IoT market that we, IoT and manufacturing market that we identified in my report on it. We think it will. It is currently the largest segment among connectivity, sensors, and analytics, and it'll continue to be. In terms of people using generative AI, will it, as everybody says, steal our jobs? I think that I take a more hopeful view that it is something that it is a tool that people will use. It's you see in generative AI all these parodies of movies in different styles or things like that. But you will start to see people who are actually good at the thing that they're trying to do, using the AI to produce better results. That may be funnier Harry Potter parodies, or in manufacturing it'll be sort of better analytics, people who can make sense of the analytics to understand what's actually happening on the factory floor. In terms of other trends, I mean, we will we also expect to see, sort of more movement toward wireless technology because, sort of the sensors need to be, the factory needs to be customizable. You need to be able to move things around as you pivot to, whatever it is you need to pivot to. We also hopefully will see less of a mishmash of wireless protocols and frankly of wired protocols. And the other thing that a lot of people brought up in interviews was hardware as a service. And just calling back to that that last poll, I kind of wonder, sort of our hardware as a service is just as a quick intro. It's paying a monthly fee for access to machinery and sensors, and the vendor takes care of the maintenance and the repairs, and you as the manufacturer, all you have to do is just sort of enjoy the benefits and pay a monthly fee, sort of see your devices, your products being produced. But as I say, calling back to that last poll, I kind of wonder if it's a hard sell for some manufacturers. Maybe it's more that the vendors are the ones who are excited about that. But I do think that as a model, it has some potential.
Yeah, and I would say that whatever it is, factory as a service, equipment as a service, whatever, the economy has changed somewhat to where we don't care who owns the asset. Uber, I don't care that it's his car. I just want to get from A to B. And in equipment, we're saying we'll keep owning it. You pay for it. And there's good sides and there's bad sides. There's cases where that makes more sense and less sense. But your point is very valid. We are adding differing economic models as well as totally new technologies to what's going on. It's not our daddy's manufacturing plant, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Thomas, we hear about edge computing. That sounds like we just put our laptop on the shop floor instead of up on the second floor where IT is. We talk about private 5G Wi-Fi, but when Francesco said, commonality of wireless and wired platforms, that's a challenge, I think, for all of us. We've got augmented and virtual reality, and we hear of all this stuff. What are a few of the technology enhancements that have already happened that you believe positioned IoT in factories as very doable right now? And what's the kind of technology coming along that you think we ought to keep our eye on and be aware of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, if you think about like the transition from, you had mechanical automation to move to analog to digital, and we've been working with digital for the last 30 years. So when you think about IoT, what's different with that is, typically you're thinking, when you think of IoT, it's like sensors connected to the cloud. So the first letter of IoT is I, which stands for internet. It's Internet of Things. So that's really been the initial wave of IoT, has just been a rise of the internet and being able to connect sensors to the cloud. Typically, when you're thinking of IoT sensors versus older traditional industrial monitoring systems, which might have been analog or digital, the volume, just the sheer volume of sensors is far more. Like, we're thinking of hundreds or thousands of sensors in a single facility. So managing that large fleet of sensors would have never been possible with technologies even just 10 years ago. There's a few things that come to mind, which I've seen in our product and similar products to ours. Just on the electronic side, being far cheaper and more mass producible. We now have these MEMS sensors, which is a silicon-based sensor, which is extremely cheap to manufacture. The cost of computing and memory, you have Moore's law, so these things have become just dramatically cheaper over the years, and to the point where the computing power that's in the devices that we have for a chip that's as big as your pinky nail, it's as strong as your computer from the year 2000, and it costs $2. So without this, we wouldn't have the computation and available at the right size and the right price to do the kinds of things we're doing with our sensors, like analyzing sound patterns and analyzing vibrations and video signals. Also, there's been some advancements in battery technology. We have rechargeable batteries. We use these lithium vinyl chloride batteries that can last up to 40 years on the shelf. That way you're not replaced. You can set up a sensor and it's going to last you a long time, and it increases the values of these assets. Now, making our way a little bit more towards the cloud and how we connect devices to the cloud, there's been technologies like LoRaWAN. Now, Becky, you were talking about your house from the 1940s and being made from bricks. We see a lot of these factories that they have thick concrete walls where other wireless communication like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth has a really tough time penetrating through. But with LoRaWAN, the frequency of the radios is much lower, and we can transmit data very long distances and through these difficult environments. And then also cloud computing has really enabled the wave of IoT, being able to deploy software much easier on services like AWS and Microsoft Azure. And running some pretty powerful stuff on the cloud, like we run our AI programs that learn continuously from the data we collect. So these are technologies that are going to stay around and have really made it possible to make it to where we are today. I think in the future you're going to see more AI. I don't know so much about more generative AI or large language models if that has a place, but just the more general machine learning we've seen related to data and connectivity and how this data can be used to optimize the machinery in your plant. I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. Now I'm going to turn to the audience Q&A, and I'm going to be looking at the questions you've entered in the Q&A area, and we'll address those. I have become aware that Nirat has not been hanging on my every word. Instead, he's been answering questions in the Q&A.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to start. No, I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. But I think the very first question is one I'd like for the entire audience to think about, because it's a real question. If OEE has three elements to the value, and one of them is quality. And the question here is that, how do I measure quality without computer vision? How am I doing that? And Nirat is saying the quality of ingredients based on its performance, etc. If I'm generating ingredients, then and I'm managing that equipment better, then I'll get better ingredients out the other end. That's true. Francesco or Thomas, do either one of you have anything to add about how you see sensors, IoT addressing the quality part of the OEE equation without computer-aided vision?
Yeah, well, with just around manufacturing yields and making sure, I mean, I guess on the side of food quality and just the quality of a product, like I think that gets a little bit more tricky around taste. I guess you can have these chemical sensors that can be there to measure different concentrations and make sure that what's going into your batches are very accurately leveled, and you're getting the right ratios of different ingredients. So there can just be some general benefits there to help manufacturing quality. And more on the side of yield and producing products at the end that aren't defects. There's many ways that you can measure this, and I know just having availability to data and having it streamlined and automated, it makes that whole quality assurance check a lot simpler.
Yeah, and I will add that the computer visioning capabilities have advanced so much in the last 20 to 40 years. It's amazing. And so sometimes just having the quality data immediately at the time of production through computer vision systems can help you know what in the equipment, in the manufacturing process, needs to be changed, and when a change was made, is it working? We can get immediate feedback. And it's not cheating to use data from other equipment to help us improve the actual production equipment. So that was a good question that I wanted to make sure got addressed. Next, will we be discussing how best to decide which machines to spend time and money on? We work with many manufacturers that want to connect my shop floor, whatever that means, but don't know how to choose the most valuable places. And again, Nirat has addressed that question. I think what he's saying here is there's the financial side, what's the most important, but there also is the bottleneck side. What's the bottleneck that I need to improve the most, which can be a quantity scenario. Francesco and Thomas, do you have anything else to add to that, or Nirat, do you want to improve your answer?
I think that kind of comes back to my very first point about, you know, sort of what are the manufacturer's needs, right? You know, what are the you know, specific problems you're trying to solve. You know, sort of the vendors can come in and say, you know, sort of wire up everything, put sensors on everything, you know, sort of put cameras everywhere, and, you know, sort of just see the improvements. But, you know, sort of you as the manufacturer need to think, what is the single metric that you are trying to address first of all. And this is in really all IoT implementations. This is something that we have seen, you know, people talk about in transportation. You know, sort of like, you know, sort of think about your most important metric, and that's where to invest your IoT budget first, I think.
Yeah, a lot of us in leadership positions have difficulty prioritizing. We're real good at saying, here's 10 things that are important. We're not nearly as good at saying, and here's the most important, the second most important, the third most important. And that's a skill that we've got to work on as leaders to make sure we're prioritizing the right things. But sometimes we need to automate priority number 10 because of what it enables. So there's a real standard thinking process that we think about other business problems, and we just need to use that same thinking process for the equipment, the IoT, etc. What's most valuable? I think we've shared a lot of valuable information regarding IoT and OEE relationships. Now, as we get towards the end of this, I'm going to ask each of the panelists the exact same question. So listen up, gentlemen. What is the single most important point you want the audience to take away from this conversation? If they only remember one thing, what should it be? Francesco, let's start with you.
So mine actually kind of fits in a little bit with your last point there about you know, sort of management and decisions and things like that. But it feeds into a broader point about equipment effectiveness is determined by how effective the people in the organization are. This means communication between the IT and the OT departments. These are the two big silos. They're both trying to do different things. So what management needs to do is share expertise and concerns between them that could hinder uptake of IoT technology, and you know, sort of make sure that all their sort of questions and concerns are being addressed, and you know, sort of pointing the way forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Nirat, what do you want them to know and never, ever forget?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. And just, you know, going back to a point I made earlier is really work backwards when you're looking at new technologies such as IoT and you're figuring out where to use it first, is work backwards from those manufacturing excellence goals of your facilities. That's what's going to get you to achieve value the fastest and in a meaningful way for your business, is by understanding what are the goals of your facilities and what kind of data can I collect more efficiently that I haven't been collecting in the past to help achieve those goals?
Okay, thank you. And Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, I guess if there's one point to take away, I would say that IoT is just on the ramp up, and it's a technology that's here to stay. The aspects of IoT that will stick around are those that will have the most economic sense for the customer, and it might be influenced through regulation and tuning things that can potentially add environmental benefits. But we're seeing a consolidation of a lot of IoT technologies, different wireless protocols slowly being the weaker ones slowly being phased out, and some more industry standards being set. And as that solidifies more, it's going to allow for more technologies to make their way in, and making the decisions easier for manufacturers.
Okay, thanks. And just another quick question. I want our audience to contemplate what the three of you said. I think those are three very important points. But just real quickly, does any of you want to address the question of communication and change management as part of an IoT rollout to improve OEE?
What do you mean when you say communication and change management?
We talk about, I'm going to go out and put all these sensors on my equipment, and I'm going to make it do all this magic. But in a lot of cases, we forget to talk with the employees about it. And in my experience, seeing technology implementations, the thing that's most frequently overlooked is communicating with the employees and having them contribute to what will help them do a better job and help them understand what's going on. I don't know if you guys see that. We all have our biased samples that we live in. So are you seeing change management and communication as critical to the success of your IoT projects?
Yeah, I can help add some color there. In a lot of our deployments, a lot of folks used to take care of the processes that IoT automated manually, or just based on their experience, they were able to make decisions. And one way that we were coached by some folks from the Accentures and Deloitte and bigger consulting companies of the world is that change management is a big part of this process. And whether that's having a really great knowledge base, or if you're a software as a service platform and you have 24/7 support, or just really thorough user guides and SOPs, putting that in place as a part of your technology package can be really helpful for these folks, and walking them through that part of the journey as well. So not just having this stuff up on your website, but actually giving it to them at the right times during the implementation, and giving and extending yourself post implementation so that they can always have someone for training, for support, or for any kind of walkthroughs that they need. Because it is difficult. It is something that they're not used to, and they're going to need our help and everyone else's that's very well acquainted with technology to help bridge the gap.
Thomas, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I would agree with all those points Nirat just made. It's anytime you bring a change to a company's operation, that's going to be extremely important to help walk them through that. Have very, very simple instructions, and different companies are going to handle things differently on how well aligned different departments are. We've definitely seen us launch our product with some customers, and other stakeholders weren't really involved within that. And then when it actually gets rolled out, there's a lot of clashing heads of how it's actually used, and it's not used optimally. So there's certain things that we can do on our end to bridge that together, and then there's certain things that we're going to count on the customer to be more aligned with how they bring their teams together.
Sure. Yeah, not every company's the same. So some of them have real skills, some of them don't even think that people need to know. So I just wondered what you guys had seen. I appreciate that. Appreciate you sharing that. I want to thank our attendees for listening in and for your great questions. And I did see on one of the questions that somebody disagreed with Nirat. So Nirat, if you can look at that one in the Q&A and type an answer, I'd appreciate that. I want to thank our
Definitely.
speakers. They're really good guys who are willing to share what they know. They know a lot, and not everybody is willing to do that. So thank you. And thank you to today's sponsors, especially IFM, Pulse Industrial, and Empiric for sponsoring this panel conversation. It's through the support of all of our sponsors that IoT World can bring together and share this kind of important, high quality content for you, the audience. You're who we're doing this for. And now it's time to move on to the next session, which is the keynote, making cyberspace safe and secure by design. I wish all of you a great day.